Hey guys, in this one, I'm gonna be going over a conversation I had with a friend about 10 years ago. A little bit of backstory. This friend uh, was Pentecostal or Protestant or one of those. I can't remember. And honestly, I only ever really learned from his brother what denomination they were, and it wasn't during this conversation. So I can't go back to this conversation and find out. Um, But number one, the one reason I wanted to revisit this was because he had some really good questions and something that I think I want to talk about in my videos. And number two, I did a terrible job of answering his questions and even gave him incorrect information. I was in high school. I was young. I'm sorry. I thought I could do it. Um, so his first question. Oh, well, a little bit more backstory. So what happened was uh, he was in this religion. He was really devout. He was really into it, and he did do a lot of work in religion. I know that he was a religiously devout person. He was in a Bible study group that I was aware of. He hung out with Christian friends at school. He was not aware of my faith as much as I think he should have been, but um, and I'll tell you why. So what happened was he had a scientific epiphany where he was like, science knows the answer to all the questions, and religion is fighting science on a lot of these questions. Um, and the issue, I think, is that most religions teach as doctrine, maybe not to be saved, but as doctrine, that the earth is 6,000 years old. It was made in 6 days. That God, that Adam, named all the creatures on the planet, and that's just, frankly, that's not true. The Bible doesn't really teach that. For one, it definitely says 6 days. Like, I'm not denying that, but it also says these are the generations of time. You know, like it's in the next verse or the next chapter, where it does say that it took a long time to make the earth. And then LDS scripture reveals that some of that could have been, I'm not saying it is, but some of that could have been spiritual creation. In essence, it was made in heaven like that, but then actual playing out could have been different. And the other thing that I want to point out is that the Bible does not teach how the earth was made. It teaches why. Um, and why is not a question you'd ask to get scientific results on how the earth was made. Why is a different question. Anyway, so his first question was, what is the best way to find truth, and how do you know you're not being tricked? Like, how do you know it's the correct knowledge? And I think in his mind, the best way to find truth is to find something that is testable and test it. Have a hypothesis, test your hypothesis, adjust your hypothesis, test it again, and keep doing that until you get the correct thing. And that's fantastic for science. That's a great way to do scientific research. That's not a good way to do religious or emotional research. Um, and just the fact is if God is real, all intelligent, and wants us to operate on faith, he is not going to make it so that you can test for him. Um, that's just all there is to it. Which in essence means that testing for God is about the same as testing for multidimensional theory. It's a good theory. There's a lot of things that could corroborate with it, but there's no way to test it. For example, if you're looking for God out in the universe, you can only see one little bit of the universe at a time, and you can't look at that spot while you're looking at another spot. And this is an example, so I'm not saying a computer couldn't look at multiple spots, but my point is nothing is ever going to be able to look at everything at the same time. And if it could, that would be God. Because only, that's something that a God would be able to do, is see everything at the same time. And since we're not God, we cannot do that. And the reality of that is that God is intelligent and knows what we are doing. He's capable of being aware of our actions. He can hide in the places we're not looking and then move to the places we've already looked when we go to look in the places we're not looking. There's just no way to do it scientifically. Science is not the way to find God. Um, but science is also a good way to learn about what God has done. The creation of the earth. Science is good on this. Like I think the earth is as old as scientists think it is. I think evolution is real. I think humans evolved. I don't even know for sure if Adam and Eve are like real people or if they're just examples of people, or if they were, I still think they were real people. I'm just saying I don't know. I think they were. I think the first humans evolved from apes, maybe, were Adam and Eve. Um, I personally hold to a theory right now, because as science has progressed, we've learned a lot of things, and a lot of people would say our consciousness is what separates us from the animals. But we've recently learned that orcas and dolphins, and some other marine mammals are able to have, like especially orcas, have complex speech patterns and even language. Orcas have feelings. They communicate with each other. They have organized systems of society. Um, so what does make us different? Why are humans like orcas are not creating art or having philosophical discussions? I'm sure. I don't know. I don't speak orca. Um, but also, at no point in the scriptures does it say that Adam and Eve were given consciousness, and that's what makes them separate. The thing that separates them from the rest of the animals seems to be that they took from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which to me means that our knowledge, our morals, are what make us different than the animals. We have morals. We know that it's wrong to murder a baby. Animals don't. They don't know that. And because of that, it's not a bad thing for them. Um, you know, with knowledge comes responsibility. If a tiger did know that eating babies was bad, it might not eat that baby's gazelle. And I know there's examples of like tigers who have gone and like saved infant monkeys and whatever. But the fact of the matter is that in most situations, the tiger's just going to eat the baby animal. Anyway, so what is the best way to find truth then? And I think in the physical area and the scientific area, it's the scientific method. That is the best way to find truth. It's to test things and retest them, share them with your friends, and see if they can get the same results. But with religion, it's not that way. And because there's no way to test it like that. However, I did make a video about faith where I broke down the faith of the Book of Mormon and Alma and how he talks about faith. And I think that that's a great video, so you guys should definitely go and watch that. But the long and short of it is that if you practice doing what the teachings of the gospel and implement them in your life, don't drink, don't lie, don't steal, don't murder someone, basic stuff like that. But then like do the other things, read your scriptures every day, pray, try to connect with God. The more you do this, the more closer to God you'll get, and the more you'll have spiritual experiences that are going to prove to you that religion is real, that God is real. That being said, like I said, I think some religions teach bogus doctrine, like the earth is 6,000 years old. I don't think it is. The Bible doesn't seem to imply it is. The Bible only says is using 6 days as a symbolic gesture for the periods of time. And if you look at the periods of time it mentions, it does seem to match up with what a scientific thing would be. The interesting thing in the Bible is that it says light and dark were made before the sun and the moon. And I think there's symbolic meaning to that. I don't think it literally means that light appeared first and then. I think light might mean something different. Anyway, so in this conversation, he asked me that, and I had a ridiculous response. I basically was just like, here's LDS theology. Here's the plan of salvation. It'll answer your question about what is truth. It doesn't. you know, and I did say something about faith and whatnot. Um, and then he informed me about his religions and all of this stuff, and we started getting into things. Um, uh, so let's get into his next question. Okay, so the next question in here is about spirits and are spirits real, or am I feeding into a cognitive bias? And so I think what's going on here is he's saying, am I just convincing myself that spirits are real? And I think there's a very real aspect of that. I think there are people who can do such things. And the answer to that, I think, is naive. Is not naive. Is I can't think of the word. It starts with an N. It's nuanced. There we go. The answer is nuanced. For me personally, I know a lot of it has to do with questions I've asked and direct feelings I've gotten from those things. Um, Recently, I had a dream about somewhere that I've been worried about where I need to work, and I had a dream, and in this dream, a city in Utah was mentioned, like by name. Um, and I had no idea this city existed. Um, and the interesting thing is, when I woke up and looked up that city to see if there was a job available there, there wasn't. So that's a little confusing. But the city did exist, um, and it was near places I thought it would be in my dream. Like in my dream, there was a river nearby the city, and there was a river nearby the city. I am not aware of this city in Utah, and it was not in my mind beforehand. Um, so yeah, maybe my mind came up with that on its own while I was dreaming. Maybe I somehow saw something during the day, but I don't think so. And there's been other times where I've been praying with God, and I've been like, one time I expressed thankfulness for something that I had read in the Book of Mormon, and I just had overwhelming, just sudden, just overwhelming power of like warmth and confirmation that this was a real thing in my in my heart. I physically felt warm from it. um Burning in the bosom is probably the best thing I can say to describe it. um but I think I can lean back again on this other thing of saying, look, try the gospel, implement it in your life. Read your scriptures every day, try to talk to God, see if changes happen. And like, even if I don't think it's confirmation bias, like if you're having a better life because you're doing things that have been said to make your life better, I don't think that's confirmation bias. I think you're just having a better life. Anyway, next question. So for this next part, this next question, I kind of so we kind of kept going with this conversation of, how do you know this, that what you believe is true? Are you able to test that? It's very scientifically driven for this guy. And this is 10 years ago. I don't know how he feels now. He might have come back to the Bible. He might have, rediscovered faith. Um, and frankly, he might have grown up a little bit. But we're going to move on. I think I've answered all of those better than what I did. And uh, the reason the conversation went on for as long as it did is because I didn't answer it as good as I did just now. Like I didn't have, I wasn't giving him answers. And looking back on it, and I have messaged him and tried to say, look, I'm sorry for this. I was arrogant. Because I honestly was. I told him I was trying to communicate on a two-way street, and then I was trying to learn about him. But honestly, I was just trying to convince him that I was right, which is just not the right thing to do. But anyway, I do want to get to this because this is 10 years ago. This is 2017, and these same accusations that everyone is leveling at us today are still here and being used 10 years ago. Anyway, so he says, do you realize what the core of Mormonism is based on? Yeah, like at the time, yes, I did, but I probably didn't answer correctly. Um, Mormonism does not exist. That is a fake term that people outside our church have decided to name it because they don't want to admit that we're Christians. I'm convinced that that's what it is. We do not worship Mormon. The church is not about Mormon. Mormon is just the guy who abridged the records. That's it. It's not Mormonism. It's not his church. I don't, and honestly, I think we could say that the people who believe that Mormonism is real are believing in a different church than what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints teaches. If we're going to use the different Jesus argument, then I'm going to use the different church argument. You believe in a different church than I'm actually worshiping. I don't worship Mormonism. I worship in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I worship Jesus Christ. Do you know what people think of Joseph Smith? Yes, everybody hates Joseph Smith, who is not in our, who wants to oppose him, and everyone in our church loves him. I mean, we've got 18 million people these days who love Joseph Smith, and then there's a percentage of the other people who are indifferent. There might be a percentage who think he's a cool guy, but there's probably a large percentage of evangelicals, Protestants, Catholics, all of those denominations that hate Joseph Smith. Do you know what people think about Joseph Smith? Yeah, I'm aware of that. Those gold tablets written in Reformed Egyptian, a language that essentially doesn't exist. First off, when you say gold tablets, we know you don't know what you're talking about. I didn't know that back then. I kind of just assumed he was having, he just forgot to say plates. If you say tablets, we know you're not talking about the gold plates. We know that you don't know what you're talking about. And what's fascinating to me is recently I've seen gold tablets come up. I've seen lots of people. I even saw one guy say silver tablets. If you're going to try and come up with things to say against the LDS Church, you need to come up with actual backed facts instead of just touting all the stuff. I honestly should ask this guy if he was forced to watch the Godmakers when he was in church. To his second point, Reformed Egyptian, a language that essentially doesn't exist. It wouldn't. You would expect it not to. At the time, I think I totally just was like, no, Reformed Egyptian is not real. I don't know what you're talking about. That is not correct. Reformed Egyptian is the language that the Book of Mormon itself says it is written in. And let me explain why it would be considered an unknown language or a language that didn't exist. Number one, it's because the people who came up with Reformed Egyptian, the Nephites, were from Semitic and Egyptian backgrounds. We know they used Hebrew and Egyptian in their writings. And Moroni, or Mormon, one of the two, says that they altered the language and made it into a Reformed Egyptian. So absolutely, Reformed Egyptian would not be similar to, Egyptian because it's Reformed. So the argument that the Book of Mormon is written in a language that doesn't exist is ridiculous, because you would expect it to be a language that is not discovered yet. Do you know how similar his story is of his being visited by Moroni to help him write down God's words is to the Prophet Muhammad? I guess in the sense that an angel visited him, but that's literally it. We don't know as much about the Quran as we do about the Book of Mormon. We know for pretty much fact that the Book of Mormon was written in 66 days. The Prophet Muhammad could have written the Quran in 20 years. We don't know. There's no first-hand accounts detailing what happened with Prophet Muhammad. We don't even know if he was really visited by an angel or not. And if there's any Muslims watching this, I'm sorry. That's just how it is. But we do have first-hand accounts of Joseph Smith being visited by not just Angel Moroni, but God the Father and his son, Jesus Christ. And not just by himself. Jesus Christ appeared to Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery in the Kirtland Temple. So that it's not just Joseph Smith who's seen Jesus Christ. And these are first-hand accounts. So no, it is not similar to Muslim, or Islam is, I think, what they would prefer. Do you know that many consider Joseph Smith a fraud? Absolutely. Anyone who does not want his agenda to be successful is going to say he's a fraud. That's a no-brainer. Not trying to be ugly, but it is rather jarring. Yes, if you listen to anti-Mormon propaganda, our church does seem to be jarring. Enough said. All right, so the final point that we kind of end up going on in our conversation is like evolution and the Big Bang theory, and he kind of went down this path, and I did kind of say, look, man, you can't think like this. But he kind of went down this path where God is supernatural, and I think this is a big problem with creedal Christianity, is that they've made God a superpower being who can do whatever he needs to do, and that magic is real, because I'm not saying that, but like, God can do anything he wants, and he can make a square circle, or he could make things that are just not possible. Um, and then I think Hayden Carroll, in it, and his channel, Let's Talk with Hayden Carroll on YouTube. I think his most recent book kind of showcases why this is an issue, why you can't just have superpower God. But I tried to tell him, like, especially from a Latter-day Saint perspective, we do not believe that God is this supernatural, magical, all-powerful being. We believe he's more powerful than any of us can even imagine. We believe that he can do anything that's possible. That's possible. Like, we don't believe he can make a square circle. We don't believe he can make a rock so heavy that it can't be moved and then move it. We don't believe he can do that. We don't believe he'd want to do that. You know, but like in LDS theology, like God, we don't teach a doctrine on how God does things that he does. Lots of members have theories on it. I myself kind of think it's found in the how is he able to know all of our thoughts? Well, maybe that's quantum entanglement. How is he able to be omnipresent? Well, maybe he's a maybe there's a law of physics in the quantum area that we don't understand. Maybe he's outside space and time and can view space and time from the outside. If something is existent outside time, can it not see everything in time all at once? And these are questions that science can't answer right now. And maybe science will be able to answer those questions in the future. I personally think Jesus Christ is coming very soon, and that we're not going to get to that point in science where we're discovering the things that God knows. But like at the same time, I could see him saying, like, well, see, you're just saying that it's a mystery and that I don't need to, that's not true. So there's lots of interesting things I could point out. Like in the Bible, when Moses goes to the burning bush, God instructs him to take off his shoes, and then he transfigures him so that he can stand in the presence of God. While that seems supernatural from a reading of it, a scientific reading of it reveals a few things. Number one, when you want to avoid being shocked by an electric current, you would have shoes on, because the rubber in your shoes helps prevent you from grounding out. I know that that's like extremely simple, but what if Moses had to take off his shoes so that he's grounded? Like I don't know. I'm not saying any of this is doctrine. This is all just speculation on my part. Moses had to be transfigured to stand in the presence of God. What if there's a reason for that? What if there's energies God has in his presence that a human body just can't maintain? We can't withstand that kind of energy. That Chernobyl is a great example. Something happened there that a human body could not withstand, and therefore it had to be shut down. People could not go in there. The elephant's foot is still super radioactive today. I'm not saying God's radioactive, but like, obviously there are energies that human bodies cannot maintain, that other objects can. We know from the Doctrine and Covenants that Jesus the Christ and Heavenly Father both have bodies of flesh and bone, and that it's different than a body of flesh and blood. A body of flesh and blood is mortal and susceptible to damage, and a flesh and bone body is not. Um, Ultimately, what it comes down to is that the LDS faith believes that God is the same creature as us. The best example I think is I don't think Jacob Hansen came up with it originally, but maybe he did. And that's the oak tree analogy, that we are acorns and God is an oak tree. Not all of us will become oak trees, but we all have the ability to become an oak tree. And when we become an oak tree, we never surpass God. He's always going to be a greater oak tree than we. But perhaps we might also become an oak tree. I've always, before I had heard that analogy, I had always used the analogy of the butterfly life cycle. When we're in the spirit world, we're a caterpillar. When we're in the mortal realm, we're in our cocoon phase, where we're shut off from everything else and we're trying to develop into something different. And then when we emerge from our cocoon, we are a butterfly and we are able to fly and do things that the caterpillar could not do. I've always described it that way. I still think that's a pretty awesome analogy, so I'm going to stick with it. But especially because the cocoon part, you're sealed off from the spirit world. The veil is over your eyes. You're not able to see, and you're in there developing into a new creature. But you're still the same. You're still the caterpillar from but you're a new creature. Like, you're able to do new things. This happens in nature. Um, And anyway, the creedal Christian churches are trying to hold on to something that is not there anymore. And that's the idea that magic is real, that the supernatural and paranormal is real, that God is a supernatural superpower being, and that he can do whatever he wants, and that he's both the Son and the Father at the same time, despite the Son repeatedly saying that that's not how it is. Um, and yeah. Today I actually saw a meme about the Trinity that made me laugh, because it had Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland in each of the circles where the Trinity usually is. And it's like, Tobey Maguire is not Tom Holland, and he's not Andrew Garfield, but he is Spider-Man. And and it just did that for all three of them. And then I went in the comment section, and they're all like, no, that's modalism, or no, that's that's this, that's that. And they all just had all these crazy things for why that couldn't actually be the Trinity. Whereas from an LDS standpoint, it's like, yeah, we agree with that. Like, Jesus Christ is not Heavenly Father. He's not the Holy Ghost, but he is God. He shares that title. Um, and Jesus himself says numerous times that the Father is greater than him, that the Father is his God and our God, his Father and our Father. He prays to the Father. We know that they're separate, and we know that Jesus definitely is there's even a scripture that says Jesus is going to hand everything he has to the Father at the end of his I'm not ministry, but at the end of his mission. Anyway, I hope this helps. I'm going to send this video to this guy. I don't think he'll watch it. I've sent a few messages to him trying to be like, hey, I was weird. I didn't answer your questions the best I could. Bottom line, science is awesome, and the LDS faith actually jives with it really well. You just need to do the research. You need to take the time. I hope this helps, and I'll see you guys in the next one.